don't have any children, but I have 2 businesses. Which do I prefer? Let's find out. Vamos a España. Sorry, I wouldn't say we're happy with that, so...
That's what they say, right? Yeah, get top. Watch out for the red dot when you're popping and wanna set shots up a guy. Ready for anything, just to my balance of ready for anything. I'm selling everything and get it by any means. I'm not gonna start shit.
Hello and welcome to episode 60. 60! Wow, I'm on the way to the gym. It's Tuesday evening. I wasn't working yesterday. I wasn't at home. I was on the way home from a couple of days away. Very refreshing, and I was gonna say remotivating as if I wasn't motivated already, but refreshing all of that in my head, and it's good to be back. Good to be back. Whereas, as you saw, as you have seen, I never know which is which. I was in the office today. I had we had a call this morning. We did a little bit of planning for some client work, catch up with Felipe on all the ads accounts. I'm on the way to the gym now. I've been in and out of the gym, in and out of training. It's all been very inconsistent recently, as you will have seen from the lack of footage, although I have been doing a little bit more jiu-jitsu over the last few weeks than I had been before that, which I am happy about. I do need to do a little bit more though. Anyway, into the gym, probably do 3-4 exercises and somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes on the bike. I think this might be the first time I've worn the Whoop in the gym, so we'll see how that goes. Is that true? Yeah, I think so. Haven't really been in the gym that much recently. I'll come back to the topic of the Whoop next week and give you my thoughts on it. I'm going to give it another week to bed in. But what I am going to talk about this week is the agency versus e-commerce business models and pros and cons to each way. Now, there is a lot of this content online of agency versus ecom, which is better, la la la. I think from a slightly unique standpoint in that there's not many people who have not only done both, but done both simultaneously. I think I have an interesting perspective on it, a different perspective. How interesting it is, that's up to you to decide. Now, we'll talk about that later on. It is something that has been on my mind for a little while. There are pros and cons to both, obviously. Do I have a preference? Not necessarily, without giving everything away, but you'll have to watch a bit further to find out. And as an extension of that discussion, I'm going to talk about what my long-term goal, my long-term vision is for what I want to do in business. And that is an extension of what some of the work that I did, was that last week or the week before, with Gary and the crew in terms of planning for the second half of the year and 3, 5 and 10 years into the future. Now, some of that already was kind of semi-solidified in my head, but it was just speaking it through and thinking it through more so than speaking it out loud. Yeah, anyway. In terms of the business acquisition / brand acquisition that I spoke about last week, that's still in the works. No progress since I last spoke to you. If you don't know the backstory of that, go and watch last week's video, episode 59. Go watch that episode where I spoke a little bit about it. The whole process all happened quite quickly in terms of kicking it off. I'm waiting on a little bit of information to kind of assist in my decision making on whether I'm going to go ahead with that or not. Alright, I'm going to the gym. See you tomorrow. Bye. Oh, we're doing actually a challenge. I'll be in the gym tomorrow at lunchtime. We're doing a bit of a content creation piece, and we're going to make a challenge out of it in the gym. So we'll see how that goes. Alright, see you later, bye.
Right, yeah, everyone eats. I've been on top of my shit. Walk with a brick. Debo come now, you walk with a limp. When them zeros come, put a comma on it. Comma and comma and comma again. Period.
What time is it? 25 to 8. That was it. Is it going to refocus? There we go. That was a poor effort at showing you the time. Today was good. Yesterday was good. When did I update you last? Yesterday morning, I think. No, it wasn't. It was yesterday evening when I was on the way to the gym. I was in the gym again today. We did a bit of a content shoot with some of the team. We did a push-up challenge. We went from youngest to oldest, which meant that I went second last before Dave, and Dave bet me. But I don't think you would have if you didn't know what the target was. I also want a VAR decision on some of those push-ups. You probably have just seen that because I'll probably get the content from Jack. Jack is the videographer who has started with us recently, who did the shoot at Virtus MMA last week. And is going to be doing a lot more content for ZOMA going forward, and I'm going to rob some or a lot of it for these vlogs. So content production is going to start increasing. Content standard is going to start increasing, hopefully. I might bring him along with me for certain days, some days, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. In the meantime, I was doing some waffling today. I was filling out applications for ecom awards for ourselves as an agency, for Coffee&Kimuras as a brand, and a couple of our clients with ZOMA as well. Will I mention them? Yeah, go on, I'll mention them. I'll leave it and see if they get nominated, and then I'll talk about it then. Don't ruin the surprise. I've been digging into Matt Gray recently. Matt Gray he's a guy with a good personal brand, and he built a business in the cannabis space. My camera's plugged in and the cable got caught, that's why I was moving. Anyway, Matt Gray has built one or more businesses in the cannabis space. I think he's built a couple of other businesses and sold them as well. He's quite a good personal brand, has done quite well, so I'm digging into a little bit of his content, see if I can get some information and see if we can apply it and make it valuable. I've also been speaking to someone else this evening who is gathering a group of founders to go to a European capital city at some stage soon. Don't know when. I'm going to hazard a guess at what he was saying, that the capital city is either Budapest or Bucharest. We'll see. We'll see if I end up going. I'm not sure. Don't think I'm going to Vegas, by the way. It's too late in terms of setting up a stand. The new merch wouldn't be ready in time. It will be all very last minute. That's definitely not happening. I could still go and scout out the event and see if it's going to be worth going next year. Haven't fully decided on that yet, though the cost of that trip for a couple of days, when I don't really want to be spending my time enjoying myself in Vegas, is probably a little bit prohibitive and probably not the best move at the moment with everything that's going on. So yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. Later on this evening, it's now, what time did I say it was? It's 20 to 8. At about 9 o'clock-ish, just shortly after 9 o'clock, I'm going to stop flicking this charger. Shortly after 9 o'clock, I'm calling the owner of the brand/business that I was speaking about last week and that I spoke a little bit about yesterday in terms of buying the business. Have their financials there. I have a stock take here. Well, it's not there, but it's in the laptop somewhere. I was reviewing it earlier and I'm going to speak to him later on and see what his thoughts are. I've kind of gathered my thoughts on the topic, on the subject, and on the potential of what we could do. And I don't think he's going to be too happy with it. Definitely not in line with what he's thinking. Now, let's leave it at that. We'll see how that goes. In the meantime, blue light glasses on, do a bit of work.
Good morning.
Cool. Hey. Hi guys.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, good. Yeah, so it depends on what you guys want to do, but I can kick off with kind of the internal updates, or we can talk about like the enterprise dashboard, the analytics overview issue.
Sorry, I wouldn't say we're happy with that. So when we agreed to enterprise, we agreed to a dashboard that we have live view all the time of how sales are going. And now we're stuck to a custom report monthly, which is not what we agreed to.
Okay, so the frequency can be, I can bring that, like, I don't have to propose a monthly. It could, like, I know it's obviously, it wouldn't necessarily be live. I need to talk to them about what the... Hello,
it is Thursday afternoon. Just got myself a coffee and I'm jumping on a quarterly e-commerce brand valuation webinar. That's a mouthful. Just to get some information and see what's going on in the e-commerce brand valuation sector. Might not be interesting, might dip out after a couple of minutes. We'll see.
A few moments later.
May have miscalculated this. Come into my calendar as 3. I thought it was at 3, but I just clicked into it and it says starts at 4. And I have a call at 4, so I won't be on it. Wasting my time again. Hello, it's Friday evening. I'm in the office. Everyone's just gone. It is 5:36 p.m. Today was an office day, obviously. This morning we had some steel delivered to the site, finally. We were going to put it up, but I actually have to wait to do a bit of concrete first. Whatever. A lot of little things to organise and get in sequence, and once we get over this little hump, once we get the windows measured and ordered, hopefully the engineer's happy with everything, then we should be flying, I hope. Touch wood. Just give the window outside the office a bit of a clean because it was getting very dirty, and we've just put a graphic on the window. I'll show you that when I'm leaving the office. Now, today I was doing a little bit of work catching up. Felipe's going back to Brazil for a couple of weeks to see his new nephew, who is 2 weeks old, which is exciting for him. We were just finalising a couple of things around ads accounts, making sure that I'm up to speed with what is going on so I can keep them covered while he's away. There's been a few conversion tracking issues with legacy accounts that we've taken over, so trying to sort those out as well. So a little bit of back and forth there, but all's good. I've also been scripting out a couple of standalone videos, which is something that I started a little while ago and I've dipped in and out of, and I just wanted to get them finished off because I want to shoot them soon. And they are my journey in entrepreneurship, my journey to being an entrepreneur more so, and the genesis and the start of Coffee&Kimuras. Something that I spoke about when I started this channel was about having not documented for a number of years when I really should have, and I wanted to, and I've spoke about starting this channel a number of times over the last few years, and I didn't until 60 weeks ago. Now there's a period there, quite a few years of me trying things, trying different business ideas, seeing what I wanted to do, what was going to work, what wasn't going to work, I suppose, more so, and learning some lessons along the way, and essentially wasting my time when I could have been documenting it all and having. I do have some of it, but not a lot of it. Now what I do have will be going into these videos, but I think it'll be good to recap it and give everyone, I've only really done a really quick run through in the very first vlog, and I want to flesh out that story a little bit more so you get an idea of how I've got here. Get my story a little bit more visible and understandable, I suppose, because it hasn't always been an agency with 10 people and 7-figure revenues and a brand that's worldwide and sponsoring athletes in the world championships and stuff like that. It hasn't always been like that, funny enough. For now, I've that pretty much done. I think I've the journey to entrepreneurship, or journey to entrepreneurship as a script is pretty much done. The scenes are all mapped out. I'm trying to map out the scenes as well so that we can be efficient with shooting that content, because over the last couple of years I've got to know how to put together a video shoot and how to make it the most efficient, and this will be quite a significant one in terms of number of scenes. I haven't counted them yet, but there's probably 10 or 12 scenes at least where I want to shoot it, and actually it's probably more. But once we have it scripted out, mapped out, and we're efficient with that schedule, it should be okay. In the meantime, I still have to finish off the Coffee&Kimuras one, but a lot of it is going to be pulled from the journey to entrepreneurship one anyway, and then just flesh out some of the sections within that. But for now, I'm going to go and put some Coffee&Kimuras gear on me and go and train. I was absolutely shattered until I ate at lunchtime today. I did eat for breakfast, which I haven't been doing over the last while, but I think it might have been a legacy. Last night I got 8 hours sleep, went to bed early. I was absolutely shattered yesterday evening and got an incredibly long sleep, which for me, I'll show you my Whoop stats, was exactly 8 hours with 21% REM sleep, which it says is optimal for an adult. The night before I got 4 hours and 40, which obviously is far from optimal. And it probably is that it's usually not the day after, but the second day that a poor sleep really kicks in, or so I found. And I've definitely found that today. And I said I was going to speak about the Whoop. I'll speak about that next week, but tomorrow, I actually just realised this morning as well that it's still optimizing. It said it's going to be another 2 weeks before it properly optimizes, which is convenient when I'm in a 1-month trial. Anyway, I'm going to speak about agency versus ecom tomorrow on the topic of my journey to entrepreneurship and all of that stuff. I'm going to sit down tomorrow, speak a little bit about that, and then get my thoughts across on the 2 different business models. Right, off to training.
Yeah. Live from Lifeline Studios. Yeah.
Vamos España. Oh, it's another beautiful day. Well, it's not daytime, it's 20 to 10 at the night time. It's Saturday. Welcome to me talking about agency versus ecom, the big debate of the week. It's not really the big debate of the week, it's the big debate for me every week. Well, it's not. It's like picking your favourite child. I don't have any children, but I have 2 businesses. Which do I prefer? Let's find out. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, which you should, at ChrisBrennan13, then you will have seen that as I'm recording this, or just before I recorded this, posted a picture. So there's a sheet behind the camera here, because I want to keep this efficient. I want to keep this, I do obviously inherently know what the pros and cons are of each one, but just in case I start stumbling and whatever. Anyway, agency versus ecom. It is a kind of a topic in terms of what you should get into in terms of online business. There's a lot of content online about how you can start your own business, and over the last few years, last 5 to 10 years specifically, it's become a big topic, and I have fallen into that trap. But I've fallen into both traps, whereas many people either fall into one or the other. Now, when I speak about this, I'm not necessarily speaking about drop shipping from the ecom side. I'm speaking about actually building a brand. Drop shipping is, well, let's touch on it, I suppose, in terms of it is a part of ecom, it is an e-commerce business, but when I speak about ecom, I'm talking about building a brand. So there's going to be the aspects that are involved in building a brand versus a drop shipping business that aren't in drop shipping, let's say. That didn't really make any sense, but anyway, I'm going to start with agency business. So obviously with ZOMA, we've done quite well over the last 3.5 years since we launched, but the success of that business is predicated on probably 5 to 6 years of reputation built up beforehand. So between myself, David and Richie, having expertise in different areas, coming together then to build an agency and get it to the stage that it's at now with 10 employees, a marquee location, and 7 figures in revenue. So there's that aspect. Now, many of the pros around agency life, I suppose, are predicated on an easy way into business. For example, today, I wasn't at it, but there was a young Irish entrepreneurs meetup in Dublin. I've been at one before, and a lot of the people there seemed like organic social media freelancers essentially, and they kind of call themselves agencies. And I think the same was today. I spoke to someone who was at the event today and said there was a lot of agency people at it. You know, that's because there's essentially no moat to starting an agency. There's no real barrier to entry. There's essentially knowledge. That's the only barrier to entry, but knowledge can be overcome easily. There's many videos on YouTube about anything that you need to do around agency business, whether that's website, digital marketing, social media content, etc., etc. Now, actually getting good at that is a different story, but there's always going to be someone that needs help. There's always going to be someone in a business, in an e-commerce business or a physical retail business, who doesn't understand the digital elements that are required to run a business these days, and that agencies can help you with. And as a younger person, as a Gen Z, millennial, whatever, then you're going to have a little bit of that knowledge that a lot of those people won't have. So that's where there's no real barrier to entry. Now, that's a pro, but it's also a con, because that means that it's incredibly competitive. There's a lot of people in the industry, freelancers, agencies, small agencies, medium to large agencies, as well as actual businesses having their own in-house marketing teams, which is obviously just a part of business, but that is still essentially competition for you. Now, one of the pros of it is that it's essentially a cash flow business, because you're really selling your time for money, essentially. Now, that is a great way to start, but that's also a con on the other side, in terms of you're going to hit a kind of a threshold there, a ceiling of how far you can go with scale, which gets into one of the other cons, which is resources and having to build a team and everything that goes along with that in terms of managing a team, employing people, employment rights and wages and all of that as well. But one of the advantages then is being able to learn how to manage a team and things like that. One of the main advantages though with agency is the exposure to different industries. With ZOMA, we work with companies in pretty much every industry. Ecom is one, a lot of ecom brands, but then we work with transport companies, technology companies, physical retail stores within different industries as well. So there's like DIY stores, gifting stores, interior design, restaurants as well. So you get exposure to different industries, you kind of take learnings and inspiration from one industry and bring it across to another, and then that means you have a variety of work on a day-to-day basis that it's constantly changing, which is keeps every day interesting. So it's enjoyable. You're waking up not necessarily knowing what you're going to hit that day, which is quite cool, considering if you're in employment, which I have been before, and you're essentially going in doing the same thing over and over again in the same place with the same people, and it can get quite repetitive. For someone like me, who I'm not going to say I have an ADHD brain, I'm not diagnosed with it, but I do find that I need a little bit more stimulation. So there is an advantage to it in that way. Now, the thing about that as well, from having all of these clients in all these different industries, is that although you may be self-employed or you're running your own business and you have a team under you, you're kind of employed in a way. You're employed by all your clients, and you're dependent on those clients to pay you, obviously, but also to engage with the ideas that you come up with, to allow you the freedom to kind of express your ideas. And it's, yeah, sometimes it can feel like you're almost employed employed in a way, and that you're kind of having to deal with all of that. So that can be a bit of a con as well. Now, one of the biggest pros, and I think this is probably the biggest pro of agency life, agency work, is the exposure that you get. And this is part of dealing with so many different companies. The exposure that you get to so many different people, different entrepreneurs, different people at different scales, different levels, different abilities, have been in business only a few years or a lot of years and have a lot of connections themselves. That is you can get a lot of teachings, learnings, and really fast track your growth personally as an entrepreneur through that. And the connections that you can build can drift across into other industries, and it can almost lead you down a path that maybe away from agency life, because again, one of the cons then of agencies is that I think it's less than 2% of agencies ever exit, because it's essentially, there's no moat, it's too competitive, there's no real value in an agency unless you get to a massive scale. And yeah, it's very, very difficult to exit from an agency, which on the flip side then with ecom is one of the pros, is that you have the potential there. There's unlimited upside in a way, in that there's so many people in the world. E-commerce as an industry is growing. You have access to millions and essentially billions of people now at this stage, that although kind of the best e-commerce brands are essentially niched, you can reach anyone in the world, and that there's no real limit on that kind of potential then. So that leaves it in a case that if you build a good brand, a good business, then you have exit potential. So you could really go hard, build a good e-commerce brand over 3, 5, 10 years and exit, and then you're set for life. Whereas you can't really necessarily do that with agencies, but with agency you have the cash flow advantage of it's a cash flow recurring business. For e-commerce then, the cash flow side, it's very, very cash flow difficult, because you're worrying about stock, you're paying suppliers up front, having to kind of make the sales then on the back end to recover that upfront cost, to reinvest it into stock, and you're in that cycle. Brands like Gymshark have a negative cash flow cycle where it's essentially down to having favourable terms with their suppliers, because they put in so many orders, so many big orders, that essentially they have maybe 60-day terms, and they know they're going to sell that product within the 60 days. So that means that they don't have to actually pay off that stock with the supplier until they've sold it. So they're in this negative cash flow conversion cycle, which means they can grow and grow and grow because they have access to that cash. For a smaller brand, it's much more difficult, because generally you will have to pay your suppliers up front, either in full or a fairly chunky percentage of that cost price. Now, there is the advantage with e-commerce, is that there is a moat to start up, in terms of you're going to need cash for that reason, to get stock, to start the brand, to put a website in place, all your automations, etc., actually develop the brand itself, get the brand out there, marketing collateral, videos, photos, social media content, engaging influencers, possibly sponsoring maybe athletes in Coffee&Kimuras case, and maybe paying those or supplying them with gear. So there's a high upfront cost in actually getting started. Now that's an advantage, because if you have the capital there, you can do that, and then there's your kind of competitive advantage to getting started. But you have to have that capital there, which is a bit of an issue for a lot of people. Although you can kind of bootstrap it, scale it, make sure you're reinvesting all the profits, but then you have to have some way to live. Now, one of obviously the restrictive elements of agency life is dealing with clients and maybe not coming up with the ideas and not being able to implement them then, because they don't feel it's the right time, they can't, maybe they don't have the finances to be able to fund that, etc. With a brand, you have full creative control. It's up to you. If you have an idea, you can implement it. If you have the capital to do it, great. If it's something that you can do on a whim, you don't need much capital, great. You have full creative control. It's all on you. You can go as shallow or as deep as you like with that. Shallow, deep, whichever way you're looking, with that kind of idea, which can be fun, but there's also a little bit of pressure with that too, and having to kind of come up with that all the time. Now, I think the biggest con with e-commerce is, I suppose, customer service, and it's an extension of relying on suppliers, so product quality, relying on couriers for shipping and time, but it always comes back to you as a brand. The end customer is contacting you if their shipment goes missing or doesn't arrive on time. They're not contacting the courier, and you end up then as a middleman. So you're dealing with this kind of customer service element. So although it's not as restrictive as kind of the agency side of dealing with, you're almost an employee of an extended outsourced employee of the company. You are kind of, I suppose, at the mercy of couriers and suppliers to a certain extent. As you would have seen earlier in the year, we had an issue with shorts with Coffee&Kimuras where it was down to the supplier, and their quality control just wasn't good enough. Now, there is obviously that you can go to a new supplier, you can find new suppliers, but there's a whole time and cost process involved in that too, which is a whole other thing. In terms of the cash flow of an ecom business, so although you have kind of unlimited upside, it's unpredictable as well. It's seasonal, it's macroeconomic dependent, it's stock dependent, which is also a con as well in terms of stock management, which is very, very difficult in terms of managing for actually having the stock available, but then from a cash flow point of view as well. So there's those there's pros and cons to that side too. But in terms of what I'd actually prefer, or what I do prefer, obviously I deal with both on a daily basis, and I've been doing them for a number of years now and have kind of deep experience on both sides. Do I have a preference? No, I don't really. As you can see, there's pros and cons to both. So I actually enjoy, speaking about my undiagnosed ADD brain, I enjoy being able to jump from one to the other. A lot of the time I get frustrated generally with the coming up with ideas and not being able to implement them for brands and businesses within our agency, but then that inspires an idea that I can implement as in-depth or as shallow as I want with the brand. So I actually, to be honest, my preference is to do both. My preference is to work within an agency but have an e-commerce brand as well. It's probably a bit anticlimactic, but there are pros and cons to both, and if you have a good team, which we do in ZOMA, to help us run the agency, great. It takes a bit of the pressure off, allows me to put a bit of time into the brand, and that's where I'm kind of building a team there to be able to take some of the pressure there and be able to run both from a high level point of view, which ideally is where I want to be. Is that anticlimactic? I don't know. Anyway, that was a long clip. I tried to rush through that as quick as possible, and it still took nearly 15 minutes, but it is a topic where there's a lot going on, and I really only touched on the surface level there because they're just the kind of key high level points of pros and cons of each side. But I do know that regardless of which way you go, it's tough. Either way is tough. Big respect to anyone who goes either way, who goes either side, because neither is easy. There's responsibilities and you still have to make a living regardless of which way you go. That's my thoughts on the topic. If you have any questions on either agency or e-commerce, if you are considering doing one or the other and you want some advice on maybe what to do and what not to do, what I've learned from, the mistakes I've made, things I've found out along the way that might be able to fast track your growth, let me know. Drop a comment. If you thought that was a valuable video, hit subscribe, and I will see you next week for another week of Behind the Brand Builder. Ooh. Ah. What happened there? Why my camera's moving? And I might bring him along. Oh, excuse me.